Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of the Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. And if you missed it, had an interview with Ryan Porter, who is Jaden Daniels' private quarterbacks coach. Has known him since he was 10, 11 years old. But I wanted to bring him on this week just because of what we saw Sunday night. Not just the final throw, but the entire game, playing with that rib injury and still succeeding in the way he did, habits that were formed long ago and how they're paying off now. So, excuse me, go give that a watch, give it a listen. But Ryan was really good. So, anyways, today I'm bringing on ESPN's Jordan Raanan to talk about the New York Giants. So, oftentimes, I don't always bring my ESPN colleagues on for two shows in the same season. But I know that some of you were rankled by Jordan's comments about the Commanders roster before the week 2 matchup. Jordan's also great. I think he's fantastic. He's a great guest, very New Yorker, but also very honest and blunt. And I love that. So anyways, wanted to bring him on to talk about what he thinks of the Commanders now and also what's going on with the Giants. They are a mess. Also, another key here, the Giants had a really good year under Brian Daboll's first year. What mistakes did they made? Building off that year that Washington can avoid here. So anyways, without further ado, by the way, if you want any updates on anything, I'm taping this Thursday morning. So if you need anything, go to ESPN.com, go to my Twitter feed. And don't forget on Saturday, I will be having my 5 things I think about the Giants game. And again, for injury updates, check social media, check ESPN.com. So anyway, there you go, folks. Here's my conversation with ESPN's Jordan Raanan. All right, George. So before we get into the mess that has become the Giants, I know there are a lot of Washington fans who weren't as
Uh-oh.
happy about your
I
first
got to
appearance
eat
this
crow.
year. Well, listen, I don't think a lot of people at that time figured this team would be 6-2. How surprised from an outside perspective at all this?
Yeah, very surprised. I mean, you look at the roster. I was actually a big Jaden Daniels guy. I really like Jaden Daniels. I didn't think he had the supporting cast around him, specifically the offensive line. I thought would be kind of problematic. They've held up very well, obviously. Bobby Johnson, former Giants offensive line coach. Ironic. I heard he couldn't coach offensive line at all. He seems to be doing okay over there in Washington. And the defense overall, the secondary, which looked problematic early in the year. It's at least when I saw them in the Giants, somehow Dan Quinn's done a great job with that unit. That unit's held up pretty well. I mean, they don't have the big pass rusher, at least by name anymore, right? They're not overly talented. Jonathan Allen might be their best player. He's not playing, right? He's out for the year. So you're like, wow, they've done a great job. They've won some, you know, eked out a few games. Obviously, last week might have been a little fortunate. They won on a Hail Mary. The Giants game earlier in the year, they eked out, kicked a lot of field goals. Giants didn't have a kicker, but you got to give them credit. They've done a great job there. So I'll eat crow. The Commanders look like this is going to be the year. It reminds me of the Giants in 2022, where I think deep down most Commanders fans know that this team isn't great. Like they could have a good year, but talent wise, like they're not like a real Super Bowl contender yet, right? Am I right to think that most people think that? Like realize
I,
that deep down?
but I think of the way the season's unfolding, nobody's putting anything past what they might do because of Jaden Daniels.
Right. Well, that's obviously the X factor here is
Yeah,
he's a stud. The
yeah.
dude's a stud. Now, the reality
But
is
I so not to cut you off, but
they're
like,
probably playing a little above
yeah,
what the sum is greater than the means of the parts at this point.
yeah,
Now, you're in a great spot if you're Washington because you could build and you're going to build around this. This is what you want to start with. Okay, we have some holes here, but we have this quarterback now. Just build around him.
right,
That's how you end up with a really good team.
right. And I think I would say, I think internally, that's exactly the thinking. So as you talk about, like with Dable's first year, they came in, they looked really good, look at going. What were the mistakes they made after that have kind of put them in this spot?
Well, this is my whole point. They misjudged their team, right? They knew deep down that the team wasn't great. Heck, they traded off their most talented wide receiver when they were going in the middle of that season, which was
Right.
Kadarius Toney at that point. Like they weren't trying to make it work. They kind of knew where they were at. You know who they were starting? What's the the Notre Dame linebacker who tore his knee when he came out. Jalen Smith,
Yeah. From Dallas.
remember the middle linebacker from
Yeah.
Dallas? He was the Giants' starting middle linebacker that year. Like at the end, he was not the same player anymore. Like they knew they knew deep down, I think, what they were. But then when it went to the offseason, they're like, well, we competed last year. Let's just try to take 3 steps forward and make a jump. We'll trade for Darren Waller. We'll roll it back with Daniel Jones. And they've realized, okay, not everything went right the next year. They had a couple injuries. The schedule was tougher, and you got a little reality check. So you got to be. I think it's very important for the Commanders to be brutally honest with themselves. That you can't skip the steps in the process,
Right.
right? They're at step one. They got their quarterback. The Giants did not get that, which is really the ultimate difference. But they're at step one. Don't try to get to step three. The goal shouldn't be win a Super Bowl next season, right? Keep building up to get to that point where you can have sustained success. I think that was the Giants' big mistake.
Yeah, and I think that's what they absolutely want to do here because they have a lot of cap room. They have a lot of draft picks. I don't think that even at the trade deadline, I don't know that they're going to be. I could see them making some moves for some low round picks, maybe some swaps or whatever, but I don't think they're going to give up a lot of capital because they want to build this for sustainable success, which they have not had here in
Right.
forever.
You
So,
look at their moves in the offseason, they weren't making moves to say we're competing this year. They were making moves to say we're building something here. So
right.
don't veer off that plan. That's the right plan.
Yeah, and it's funny because when this team won the division in 2020, they were swayed by the fact that they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who won the Super Bowl. They played them close in the playoffs. So I remember some fans saying to me like, "Oh, that means they're close." I'm like, "No, nobody would think that." And then I heard it internally. I'm like, "Oh my God, they think
Yeah.
that like they're screwed because if you think that that was the one game that was the only thing, you've got to look at the total picture." And
Now you got to
so,
be honest with yourself.
yeah,
It's hard sometimes because you want to believe you're closer than you really are, but you got to remember. Look at some of the other teams. Like the Detroit Lions are going to be a team that you have to be reckoned with in the NFC for a while. Like they built it up the right way. Like
yeah.
and they have talent all over the roster now because of that. So that's kind of what you're going to be competing with that and 49ers. You just you're not just like, well, maybe we're good enough. No, you have to build it up to be good, that good.
Yeah, and I think that's I do believe that's the plan they're taking. I don't think I think they knew they would be better than what people thought. I still think 6-2 is a little bit above where, realistically anybody could have thought. Jaden Daniels is a big thing, but other parts have gone well. It's the best atmosphere I've been around, but you never know, like you don't know always what that means, right? So who knows? But in New York, what the hell is going on?
The usual, John. They you could start with the point that they still don't have that dude at quarterback,
Right.
right? I mean, Daniel Jones is in his 6th year. He is what he is. He can play okay. He's not good enough to put you on your shoulders, take you, lift you, and get you to victories, which is the difference. That's what Jaden Daniels does for
Yeah.
the Commanders right now, right? I mean, he can take you and lift you when you need it most and carry you, and Daniel Jones can't do that. Now, they have problems throughout the roster. The special teams has been brutal. The run defense has been brutal. They're 32nd in the league. I don't know exactly what they are after that Pittsburgh game, but they're allowing. I'm pretty sure they're 32nd in the league. That didn't change, but averaging, allowing 5.6 ish yards a carry. So that's a problem. The offensive line is now a problem again because Andrew Thomas is out.
Yeah.
They started some guy, Chris Hubbard. You probably barely heard of him. He was on the
Heard of
40.
Chuba
He's a
Hubbard.
veteran, but he was on the 49ers practice squad a few weeks ago. They had a young guy, Josh Azudu, at left tackle. They gave him one game. After that was their plan all off season. They picked the guy off the 49ers practice squad, threw him in there. Alex Highsmith had 9 pressures against him. 9 in one game. Okay. So their left tackle is a huge problem. I don't even know if who they're gonna run out there this week. We're taping this on Wednesday morning, so it's early for that. So their offensive line is still not great. They have some veterans throughout, so the rest of it could be okay, but it's not super high end. And you know, they're just not super explosive. Their offense, quite frankly, I'm trying to find the right word, and the only word is stinks. I mean, it stinks.
Yeah.
They're averaging under 15 points per game. The only reason they're not 32nd in that category is because the Miami Dolphins didn't have Tua for a while. And I'm pretty sure they'll pass him pretty soon too. So their offense can't score a lot of points, as we saw the first meeting right there.
And Malik Neighbors, I mean, how would you describe his season? They target the hell out of him. Yeah,
It's
they
been a little up and down
drops,
because he had that concussion,
right?
right? So Thursday night, a couple weeks after they played Washington, that Washington game, he was awesome. I think you saw that.
Yeah,
Guy can certainly play. Uh, but he had a concussion, kind of slowed him down. The offense has been sputtering. The offensive line is more problematic now without Andrew Thomas. So he's not quite getting the same opportunities. Teams are giving him different attention. And he has struggled a little bit with drops, but he's a dynamic player. He is going to be a number one receiver in this league. That's pretty clear. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And he's capable of having a huge game and, a little extra motivation. I'm sure it doesn't hurt. I mean, him and Jaden Daniels super close. They still talk like every day,
right.
basically. When they throw the Hail Mary, Malik Neighbors is out there, reposting on Instagram the Hail Mary because it's his buddy Jaden Daniels and telling him the ball out. So it is that, which is, by the way, super awkward. But
Sure, that went over well in New York.
I think at this point, like guys do that. It's a strange phenomenon. I'm sure fans do get on him for it, but that's just where we're at. Man.
What's happened with Deontay Banks?
Yeah. First round pick out of Maryland. You guys, some people up there might know him. Last year,
Good.
had an okay rookie year, showed some flashes. The problem was he got pushed into the number one cornerback role out of need, desperation, didn't have anybody else at the position. And now he, I think, has this idea that he's something maybe more than he actually is. Right. And you see now multiple occasions, lack of effort. Now, it was weird because he quit on a play against the Eagles 2 weeks ago. Clearly, you know how like in practice, you can't tackle, so you just kind of run off at the end of a play and you don't hit the quarterback, whatever. That's kind of what he did. And to me, it's like those are things you get into habits of doing. And so that was the second time this year. The Giants decided not to bench him now. We're not going to bench him after that. You're still going to start on Monday night against Pittsburgh, probably because they're so shorthanded at cornerback right now. They had a bunch of injuries. Hey, can we really afford to bench him, sit him? No. But guess what? He goes, they don't like what they see from him early. They pull him in the middle of the game. Now, Deontay Banks is on the bench for the rest of that Monday night game, the final 2.5 quarters against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Brian Dable said they can't give up on him. He's a first-round pick from last year. They need him. They need him desperately. They don't have much at the position. Now he's going to be back on the field. They're hoping super motivated, but they were hoping that last week. And his tackling against the Pittsburgh Steelers, while not lack of effort, just wasn't good. But I think that's kind of who he is. And I think the Giants are finding that out. And they need him to play at a much higher level because really around him, they don't have that much.
Do you think, and I know this, we're taping, like you said, taping it Wednesday. Is Tracy, you think Tracy, the running, what's his status for this week? He's been
Yeah,
pretty good.
he's been good. He's certainly worked his way and earned the starting running back role. He's clearly ahead of Devin Singletary at this point, who's like a bit player. It's Tyrone Tracy's show if he's healthy. But when you have a concussion, you never know. We'll have to see how it plays out. He's got to pass each step. Probably won't know till Friday, Saturday at the earliest. I mean, the key to that is always watch on Thursday. You have to at least get to basically a limited practice on Thursday. If you don't get to a limited practice on Thursday, it's a pretty good sign that you're not going to play this week.
Right. Thibodeau, without him in there, what's been the fall off?
Azeez Ojulari has 6 sacks this year in that spot now. So he's actually played really well as a pass rusher. The fall off is he's not as good a run stopper. And I told you about the Giants' run stopping problems before. Not that it's him. They have other problems. Their biggest problem, by the way, like I mentioned before, Deontay Banks, is their edges and the cornerbacks. Like that's where teams just exploit them either there or right up the middle. They don't have anyone else aside from Dexter Lawrence. That, they don't have the depth there, I should say. But so that is what they lose with Azeez Ojulari. But he might actually be a better pass rusher, straight bend pass rusher than Kayvon Thibodeau. So not losing that much in that area, I would say.
Do you think is he a guy that at the trade deadline, if it keeps going south, that they would get rid of just because they have two other high price guys there, or what do you think?
Well, the thing is, yeah, he's a free agent at the end of this year. So it
Right.
is something they should consider. I do think so. Darius Slayton is another one they should consider. Uh, they have Kayvon Thibodeau behind, coming back eventually, so that kind of makes sense. But you need pass rushers in this league. The problem is, are they really going to re-sign Azeez Ojulari? He's got 6 sacks already. If he gets between 8 to 10 sacks, there's someone in the league that's going to want to take a gamble and
Oh,
bet on that talent, right?
sure.
Teams need guys who can get after the quarterback. The Giants, it's tough for them because they're eventually going to have to invest in Kayvon Thibodeau, and they're already heavily invested, close to $30 million a year in Brian Burns. So it's probably unlikely they're going to be able to invest in that. And if you're Azeez Ojulari, hey, you're this close. You're 9 games right now from getting to free agency with a possible double-digit sack year. That's a pretty good thing to be in. That's a pretty good spot to be and pretty young. So
Yeah, for
yeah, I
sure.
do think if the price is right, but is somebody willing to give up a third round pick for Azeez Ojulari on a rental, fourth round pick?
You better sign him to a deal if you're going to do that to me. Yeah.
Exactly. But he's got an injury history, which complicates it. So he's a guy you have to worry about injuries.
Last thing.
All right.
Giants 2-6, Jets 2-6. Who gets the most heat? And I know that the Rodgers thing probably factors in.
Yeah, one team has Aaron Rodgers, and here's the difference: the Jets came into the season with great expectations, right? So their collapse, their fall, they fired their coach already, John, right? And what happened? It made him worse. That's the reality. The Jets are worse, so it's clearly on the Jets. The thing, and you'll see this on Sunday. There, and you've been here before.
Yeah.
There's a malaise with this Giants team. It's like, oh, they're bad again. Come on, what are we doing? Like, oh God, they're boring. They can't score. Yeah, Brian Dable's supposed to be an offensive genius. We're 31st in the league in points for the second straight year, by the way. Okay, like, what are we doing here? This is terrible. Okay, and you're gonna see that stadium on Sunday. The Commanders are playing well. There's gonna be that stadium's gonna be 25 to 30% Washington fans, is my guess.
Hmm.
Probably was close to 30 to 40% when the Eagles came in. Like, that's where the Giants are at right now. I mean, you've been there,
Yeah.
but that's where how people feel about this team. There's no hope until you get that next quarterback.
That's has Jaden Daniels has breathed so much life into this, not just the franchise, but the fan base. It's remarkable how in 8 games, how much it's turned because
I
of
mean,
him.
the Giants need that in the worst way, and I need that in the worst way. I was telling
Oh,
people that the other day. It's like for covering this team, like I need them to draft a quarterback in the worst way. We need just because we need that hope. We like what it's like. You see what it's
yes,
like. People want to know what's Jaden Daniels doing this week. Is he going
correct.
to play? Which, by the way, how healthy is he?
Healthy enough.
If you could throw that Hail Mary, you're good enough. That's good to go.
Yeah, he's 65 yards in the air on a Hail Mary healthy. That's how he is. But you're right, you're right. Like, we've both covered this for a long time. And to cover someone who actually it's fun to watch an offense, I'm not always sure how to process it still because it's been so long that I was looking up like they averaged 20 points or less for like 6 straight years, something like that. It's been brutal. And most of the time I've covered this team, they've had bad offenses. It's brutal.
2019, Daniel Jones actually stepped in, and if you go look at some of his first few games, you're like,
Yeah.
"Wow, this is going to be exciting."
Yeah.
So
One of
you
them was
felt it for
here.
like a
Yes.
minute. Yes, he threw 5 touchdowns against the Commanders in a game in his rookie year, I believe
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was that was might have been the best game of his career, by the way.
And then here we are. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, anyways, it's
I'm not saying that's what it's gonna be like with Jaden Daniels, Commanders fans.
no,
Come on, I'm not at all. I'm a
yeah,
big Jaden Daniels
yeah.
guy. I thought he was a stud coming out. The Giants loved him. I think that was the guy that ultimately they kind of eyed, and they're like, oh, can we get him? And then they found out real quick that
Yeah,
wasn't an
no, there
option.
was there was no chance of that. And
No
that's the
chance.
problem. Like they if you can love a guy, but if you can't get him, what difference does it make? And you know, these guys were never going to trade that. So
Yeah, they knew real quick that wasn't going to be an option. They were hoping that those guys maybe like Drake May or someone else originally
Right. Yeah.
when
No.
that number two, and that Jaden Daniels could be had at 3 or 6 or whatever it was. But
Yep. Nope. No, they're pretty happy. So, all right, Jordan, I'll see you on Sunday. Thanks, man. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jordan for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Saturday with my 5 things I think about the Giants, or not just about the Giants game, because most of it's going to be about Washington. I talked to Johnny Newton about strides that he made, about the communication in the defensive secondary, and and more. So join me for that, and we'll talk a little bit about the Giants game, things I learned after watching them on tape this week. Talk to you next time.